brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. I just want to say thank you all for the support. And again, if it's something that's been beneficial for you, I ask that you share it. We're trying to grow the audience, and I can't do it without you all. So whether you're listening to this, watching this, please continue to spread the word. Please and thank you. Today I have a special guest, and we're here to talk about a very interesting topic. I have a good friend, a confidant, and one of the most thorough people that I've ever met, Mr. Deon Carson. Welcome back to Baxter's Buzz, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Good, man. I'm excited. As people may or may not know, I've just written my first book. The book is called Angelic, a Letter to Zara. It's a letter to my daughter. We are providing, I'm providing context. I'm provide, as far as my upbringing, and just giving her lessons that she can take. And I'm really excited for people to read it, and I'm prayerful that people can tie it to some things, and maybe it could help them in their journey. But one of the topics that I talk about in the book is you are more than enough, right? And how the fact that your past does not predict your future. And as I thought about who to have on, I couldn't think of a better person to speak to that topic and give me their insight on what sort of that topic and what it means to them. So first of all, we've had a number of conversations offline over the years. When you think about your past and sort of and the trajectory that many people around you were on, and you look at sort of where you are now, as a truly productive member of society, a war veteran, a sergeant, a leader, and a combat veteran, if that's such a thing. You've come miles from where you started. So like, do you spend a lot of time reflecting on that journey?
I do, because I look at different, like when I grew up, I lived in almost every part of Detroit, almost literally. And I think about in each spot I had a best friend or a set of friends. And a lot of guys that I grew up with, I think about, like I speak to one of my friends who when I was living off East Warren, who was serving life. He was my best friend over there. And I think about my friend when I was living on Grand River in Greenfield, who was murdered a few years back. And I just think about those areas that I lived in and those people that I encountered that were genuine friends I grew up with, and we were homeboys, and we didn't end up taking the same path, even though we were from the same environment.
Speak to the assembly when you were at the elementary school.
This Longfellow Middle School.
That's right. Excuse me, Longfellow Middle School. I'll let you set the story up, but you had some visitors, some reputable people to come and talk to the children, right? I mean, the premise was for them to come and provide some encouragement and maybe help scare a few people straight. I mean, talk about that assembly at Longfellow and what their the words that were said to you young people.
Eighth grade. It's towards the end of the year of our eighth grade year, so we're about to graduate and go on to high school. They have an assembly. I only remember one speaker. They had members of the local government there, and I remember one speaker. It was a police officer from Gang Squad, and this man proceeded to tell us pretty much that. Well, first he started talking about how he knew our mothers was on crack and weird stuff like that. But then he went on to tell us that he would eventually investigate the murder of or arrest many of us in this audience. He put a prophecy on our lives as young Black men, because that's pretty much who he was talking to, that we would either die or we would go to jail. We're 13 years old. Our minds haven't even begun to fully form yet. And this is the message that he embedded in us, which for some people, it led to fatalism, nihilism, wanting to give up. Some people are motivated, some people are angered, but it did have a negative effect on some of the people there. And for an adult to do that to a group of children was negligent at best.
Thoughts have power, words have power. There's tons of studies as it relates to like labeling, right, and how people respond to that. Even so much as like the way you talk to a plant, right, that you're growing. You talk nicely to one, you talk negatively to a plant, and you water it the same, you expose the same amount of sunlight, and these plants respond differently, right? That's amazing. And when you think about an authority figure, police officer, speaking to young Black men, saying basically your life is nothing. It's predestined that you guys aren't gonna amount to anything. I can't imagine how people felt about that, and if that's the expectations that everybody had for them.
Yeah, because we grew up in the era of all the statistics. 1 in every 3 Black men will be killed and this and that. You remember all those statistics. But this was a person in the flesh, not speaking in general. He was saying, you in this audience, you're going to die and you're going to go to jail. Not that you may, not that it's possible, or even saying that it's possible not to. He was saying this is going to happen to you. It was personal.
Yeah. How did you feel about that?
I literally looked at my buddy. I was sitting next to Pierre and Ray Ray. We on the basketball team together, and I said, "This fool ain't talking to me," because I've never been the one to just accept things. But I saw some of the other people, and they looked like they took it as truth, as gospel. Like, I reject all those types of things, always have been, but everybody's not designed that way. And I guarantee you that triggered someone in that crowd, or even several people in that crowd, to believe it and to figure what's the point.
Yeah. You talk about being just challenging these matter of fact statements. That's part of your personality in general, right? Can you speak to you talked about a couple of childhood friends, but like think about some of the people that we know, that you know, that I don't know, vice versa, but like the paths that they went down, and how do you think that you ended up sort of as a productive member of society and not feeding into a lot of stuff we saw other folks sort of feed into?
Um, I mean, at certain points, man, you can't say anything but God, because it wasn't that I was smart or I was just actively seeking to make the right decisions all the time. Um, and it seems like right before a lot of those friends took that real deep turn, I would move and end up somewhere else.
Mm.
And it seems like and then right before another deep turn, I would move. And then eventually I ended up back at Ferndale with you guys. And then God brought us back together. And we were never for just allowing each other to say and do anything unchecked. You know, I think that our personalities, especially specific personalities within our group at the time, we just never allowed that. And we were always challenging one another, and we were always rebuking one another, for lack of a better term. Like, what are you doing? If it was, you remember 10th grade wasn't that good for me.
Right.
10th grade was not that good for me, but you and Ezra specific, Pastor Tillman, y'all were like, man, come on, dude, like, let's skip. I was like, come on, dog, like, you got to do better than this. And we did.
Yeah. No, yeah. And yeah, thank God for that grace, right? When we weren't making the best decisions, and we still, we still had that grace. One of the things I talk about in the book is, my mother being a drug addict. And, I think about the people in the neighborhood, and I think about the people who had parents as drug addict, or at least one parent as drug addict. And I, and I didn't mention this in the book, but I happen to have one of my closest, longest friends, maybe probably definitively my longest friend, Brian. His family lived next door to us on Coyle, right? When I lived in Detroit. And who would have known that 20 minutes away and on 8 Mile from Schoolcraft and Coyle to 8 Mile in Wyoming, that I would be in the neighborhood, moving with my family to that Ferndale area, that Brian family would be there, right? So it's like, you see kids and you don't even realize that it's a big thing. Like, oh, that's the kid that I play with next door to, not even knowing. But the book centers around lessons for Zara, for my daughter. She had to be 3 or 4 at the time, and I had seen Brian's family, Tony, who I hadn't seen in years, and he remembers me. He remembers me as this young kid, similar, close to what Zara and Bryce's age is now. He knew what was going on in that house as an adult, right, much more than I did, right? He saw me with my daughter, again, as a productive member of society. Just it was like the 4th of July, just coming to hang out. I hadn't seen him. He's like, Baxter, and he started to cry, man, because he was like, I literally know where you come from, dude. And to see me in one piece, with my own, offspring at the time, it just overwhelmed him. And it overwhelmed me because sometimes we don't spend a lot of time thinking about where we've come from and sort of the things that were set up, where we could have turned out a number of different ways,
Yeah.
Man, it kind of, just to think about how proud he was, and how, like I said, as an adult, him seeing kind of what was going on, it must have been like not seeing a ghost, but must have been just like an amazement, because we know that story, we've been really blessed, and the story hasn't played out the same way for so many others, right? Who
Yeah.
were just this, or not, even more talented, even more smart, and with the bevy of their own gifts, and it just, the things just didn't play out the same.
Yeah. It's I get the whole premise behind, product of your environment thing. I don't wholly agree with it, because you can have four people in the same environment and you can get four different outcomes. We're a totality, we're a sum total of our decisions and our blessings and opportunities that we don't create for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, everybody that we know was one decision away, one step away, one missed opportunity away from maybe not being here, maybe being in a totally different state of mind right now, or whatever the case may be. Because to come out of that, like you said, and for him to see you, he understands that, because he knows for you to be where you are, you had to get opportunities, blessings, and then you had to make decisions to take advantage of those opportunities and those blessings.
Yeah. When changing subjects a bit, there's your past that you have to contend with, but then there's also the past of like your family that people will hold over your head, right? And they'll have a set of expectations for you just based on what your parents did or didn't do, right? Speak to that. And again, that's a whole different barrier
Yeah.
sometimes, that and
Yeah.
and even the decisions that we make along the way, people try to reduce us down to just this one thing. Like speak to like the family piece. Personally, if you had to, deal with any of that, and then like, yeah, how you interpret it.
Yeah. Individually, I've never really had to deal with that because I lived so many different places. It wasn't like I had a family reputation in different neighborhoods. But I've seen it. I've seen people I've seen a parent treat a child differently because they have a different father than their sibling. I've seen it because they put the expectation of that part of their family onto that person. I've seen people put extra pressure on someone because their last name is attached to achievement. I've seen people put no expectation on people because their last name is attached to what they would view as failure. Your People talk about family curses and generational curses and all of those things, right? In my worldview, generational curses can be broken by obedience.
Mm.
And if you have a different worldview, generational curses can be broken by decisions. I'm gonna still say obedience, but you can say it however you want to say it.
Sure.
You are not restricted to the failures or the offenses of your family. You can rise above all of those things, and people do it every day. People make it because of circumstances, and people also make it in spite of previous circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we didn't move. We didn't, when we got to Royal Oak Township, my family had been there. We didn't move again. I moved a couple times prior to that, but so there was definitely a number of uh expectations or lack thereof for me. And if I'm being extremely honest, losing my mother at such a young age, there I had sort of half siblings that I don't think people looked at us the same, right? They were a little older. They had two, they had a different mom. They had, they were still around. I think they had different expectations of those folks. And, I don't know if they always felt like, I would be curious to know what people thought if we could go back in time, like if they really felt like the world was mine, for the taking. I think sometimes we over value like a clean set of clothes and like some brush teeth, right? It's like, well, this kid, he looks like he's being taken care of, then he probably is going to be okay, right? And there's so many other blind spots and so many other things that aren't, voids that aren't being filled, that folks maybe take for granted. And a lot of times I felt like I was, just displaced, just a bit out of place everywhere. And I would have benefited from more expectation than the sort of no expectations that I really witnessed.
Yes. Yeah. And that's motivating factors for different individuals. Like, what can help put the battery in the back of this child? And being parents now, we have to evaluate our own children and see what can motivate that child. Can this child take having expectations heaped upon them, or do they need to have them a little bit at a time? Does this child thrive under pressure? Because we're all different, right? When I was in the Army, I realized I couldn't even lead everyone the same. Couldn't lead some soldiers. When I was on their heads, that's when they were at their best. But some of them would buckle under that and retreat because that wasn't part of their personality until I learned how to individualize it a little bit. One standard, but individualize how I disseminated it to different people. I wasn't as good of a leader. But yeah, that expectation would have definitely propelled you further. It would have propelled me further at the time. Thank God that we latched on and caught traction and became a bit of self-starters, but it definitely would have been useful.
Yeah. And thank God for each other, right? Because we did our best to hold each other accountable as much as you can do with people that's your same age, right? Yeah. No, I'm of course we've talked about a couple different pieces of the book because these are things that you and I have talked about for 30 years now, as far as how we've tried to navigate and the lessons that we're still learning, the things that we are still trying to try to master, right? We learn things, or we recognize things. That doesn't mean that we always sort of master them ever, right? But we're working towards those things. I just want to say thanks for your contribution to my life and helping me get to this point, your encouragement about this first book and putting this entire project together. And, I know you got some projects that you're working on as well.
Brother, thank you as well.
Man, yeah, we'll have you on again to talk about some of the things that you're working on, because I can't wait for you to be able to share that when the timing is right. But yeah, and to everyone watching, I just want to remind you all, or even listening for that matter, that you are all worthy. You just need to tap in and embrace your frequency. On behalf of Deon Carson, I am Baxter E. And thank you all for watching. Peace.
Welcome into his brain, welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk, come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic Black history. This